starts home.
And joining us now is Tom Croft, Managing Director of Heartland Capital Strategies and author of the Responsible Investor Handbook. Tom, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jeff.
What do you mean by responsible investor?
So responsible investment is essentially taking into account extra financial considerations such as environmental, social, and governance concerns. So that when you make an investment, you're accounting for risk and you're looking to make an investment more for the long term.
Now, ESG, environmental, social, governance, has become its own shorthand for what used to be known as socially responsible investing.
Right.
How do you assess where that, I don't want to call it a trend, but it seems to have taken on added importance?
Well, it's actually taken on huge importance after the financial market meltdown of 2008, where a lot of people's pension monies were invested in subprime mortgages, and after some of the disastrous environmental investments that were made. So that today there's this entire framework called the United Nations Principles of Responsible Investment. And there are something like 1,500 signatories. These are banks, pension funds, corporations, insurance companies who have signed up to become responsible investors. And they control, in total, $60 trillion in assets.
$60 trillion in assets?
Right, that's right.
Now, we talked about the recent growth in ESG investing, but it's not a new thing at all. You come at this from the perspective of organized labor,
right,
which has been at it for a long time.
Right. So, this money is pension monies, but also 401ks, insurance funds, bank deposits. This is our money. And unions many years ago began investing responsibly, similar to the Quakers. But back in 1850 in Amsterdam, unions were investing in social housing. And over the century, across different countries, such as the US and Canada and Europe, Australia, people were investing in housing and banks and co-ops and credit unions. And so that led to then some of the responsible pension investment strategies that we've begun to see since 1960, when Martin Luther King met with the president of the AFL-CIO, George Meany, and they began to invest pension monies from construction workers into housing to create affordable housing and to ease some of the social conditions that were happening.
Now, for people with a fiduciary responsibility for those funds, the question has always been performance.
Correct. And the performance numbers are pretty impressive. I mean, there are now meta-studies which have been gathered by academics across the globe at Harvard, at Oxford, at large institutions like Mercer. And these studies are now leaning toward the claim that if you're investing responsibly, you're more likely to outperform the market. And if you're also practicing investing in ways that are practicing good corporate governance, you'll also have financial outperformance. So, that's a great trend, and that's probably the case for decades, but the market was always kind of saying, we don't think we should be investing responsibly because it might reduce our returns on investment. Now the opposite is true, and we now have a lot of evidence across the world.
Your target audience for this book is big organizations, big funds.
Right.
How should individuals think about this?
Well, it's the same consideration. Some of what we've talked about in the book, my author was Annie Malhotra, who is a young writer from Toronto, and she herself has a CFA, and she has worked in impact funds, which are smaller investment projects. But it's the same that holds for individual investors as for larger scale investors. And in fact, millennials are really turning to responsible investment. You know, they don't want to invest in ways that destroy the environment or that mean that companies are mistreating people. And so you're seeing just an explosion of interest across the different kinds of platforms, investment platforms that people have access to. And so I think over the next 10 years, you'll see a huge transformation that'll take place with a lot more thought given to things like renewable energy, green buildings, electric cars, hybrid cars, advanced manufacturing, and those kinds of things.
Is there one project that stands out in your mind as maybe the most impactful or successful responsible investment?
Well, there's hundreds of projects across, you know, this region and the country. The Gallery Place in Chinatown is a great example of pension monies being invested in
Chinatown, Washington.
Chinatown, Washington, sorry,
Right.
and where those investments help to bring back part of the East End, and it is now a destination for people to go to. And those investments resulted in good jobs, good union jobs for several hundred people, and you're seeing those kinds of projects, a lot of projects in the D.C. area and Baltimore, where there's a focus on affordable housing, for instance, which is an issue that's facing
everywhere.
A lot of people. So, so there's a lot of great stories out there. We tried to capture some of those in the book, and part of what we tried to do is to give some attention to some of these great thinkers who are doing this great work.
You spent some time in the book on the regulatory framework and restrictions on asset managers.
Right.
And is that a big issue for investment managers?
No, and in fact, the problem is that there were some conflicting regulations that were in place for pension investors as a result of some of the regulations that were put in place under the Bush administration. That particular regulation or rule has been corrected, and the Department of Labor has now essentially said that most investors should consider environmental, social, and governance concerns. Now, this is sort of bringing the U.S. up to speed with the rest of the world, where there are more directives and more of an urgency to invest responsibly.
The book was commissioned, you wrote, by the AFL-CIO.
Right.
Are there any unions that don't buy into this idea?
I'm sure there are. You know, just as there are pension funds that don't, but there's a big push, you know, on the part of the United Nations and the PRI and all of the private sector entities, the signatories under the PRI, including unions, to educate those trustees and capital stewards about the importance of responsible investment.
Now, who actually implements these ideas? So you could have a pension fund with a lot of money in it and a desire to do something good. What do you do next?
Well, the first starting point is to really is to adopt an investment belief statement. And those kinds of statements essentially then can structure your investment strategy to include ESG as part of your overall mandate.
And you personally, you don't manage money?
No, we do not. Thank God, no.
Very good. Tom Croft is the author of the Responsible Investor Handbook, Mobilizing Workers' Capital for a Sustainable World, and Managing Director with Heartland Capital Strategies. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is our program for this week. Tune in every Thursday at this time for Your Money and Business. And remember, you can see full episodes of our local programs. They are online at video.mpt.tv. That's video.mpt.tv. Please follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter address is @MPT News. And we're back tomorrow at this time with State Circle. Now,